Thank you, Michael. It's really a great pleasure to have the opportunity to introduce our speaker tonight, not only because of his impressive accomplishments and the fact that we have kind of a common bond and interest here, but because his presence here tonight represents the culmination of really kind of a 3-year saga, right? It's one that probably had as many plot twists, or almost as many plot twists and characters as one of your fine novels. In any case, our speaker here tonight, Stanley Robinson, hopefully most of you are familiar with his work, but he is critically acclaimed master of the science fiction genre, and also, I guess, what my wife Virginia would call speculative fiction. I don't know if you approve of that term, Stan. But he's published more than 20 novels, and many of them have been bestsellers. His books are meticulously researched, and they cover just an incredible variety of themes. I'm not sure I could list them all, but they run the gamut of the various sciences and ecology and environmental studies, socioeconomic theories, political systems, historical perspectives, humanism. It's truly amazing the range of things you're able to encapsulate in your novels. Some of his books have dealt with a really important issue in our world today, and most notably, probably, I hope some of you read his Ministry for the Future, and this deals with the issues of climate change, and he offers actually some very unusual and inventive suggestions on how perhaps we could deal with climate change. But having said all that about his incredible accomplishments in science fiction, speculative fiction, and the like, that is not the reason we invited him here tonight to speak to this band of mountaineers and rock climbers and peak baggers. Instead, as Michael was mentioning, the reason is his just wonderful autobiography, I would call it, called The High Sierra, a Love Story. And this delightful book, I think, really reveals Mr. Robinson as a kindred spirit with the Sierra Peak section. He describes his lifetime of backpacking up and down the length of the Sierra Nevada and going over arduous passes to remote plateaus and canyons and lakes and, yes, some peaks. So something that we can all very much identify with. In his book, besides sharing with us some of his adventures, and you had some pretty good adventures there, I think what really adds a lot for me and for hopefully many of you is that he offers some insights on geological, glacial, and historical perspectives about the range that give us more of an appreciation and understanding of the range. And I think it adds something to this range of light that we all love so very much. So with that brief introduction, if I can turn it over to you, Stan, we look forward to your presentation.
Okay. I want to thank Phil Bates and everybody else involved with this. It's been a true pleasure. I am a Sierra person, and I can tell I'm in a crowd of Sierra people. That's cool. I love that. I speak to a lot of audiences, but really this is kind of like the hometown crowd. And you know what I mean, because Sierra people know that Sierras are special and different. So there's so much to say that I had to focus it, and since this is the Sierra Peak section, it is true, the name of my talk worked out right, which I worked out with Phil. A new route in the Sierra Nevada for you all to contemplate, and a new name also. So it really, this is just 2 peaks, and I'll tack in some other stuff along the way, but trying to focus by way of the slides. So we came into Doozy Basin in September of 2023, and it came over Knapsack Pass, and we're coming up towards Bishop Pass and camped. And Isosceles Peak was looking really, really good. We camped under it. We contemplated it at sunset. More photos later, and I was just thinking, damn, that's such a fine face. Unusually fine, I thought. And it was literally a month or two later at home, sitting in my living room, an old photo of Isosceles Peak that my wife and I had taken in 1981. And it sits on the ground because we have too much stuff on the walls. And I was looking over and across the couch, and I shrieked, and everybody in the living room with me, my whole family, leaped to their feet like maybe I was dying. And I rushed over to this photo, and I picked it up, and I went back to my selection of photos from that trip of 2023. And you will quickly see why my eye and brain and memory came into connection here. That's Isosceles Peak directly from the west, Doozy Basin, the Three Lakes, etc., 1981. And here it is coming more from the north in, say, I think this was 2010, the big snow year. And notice this buttress here. And then this is this is still the same trip. 2010, big snow year, and coming from about the same spot as the 1981 spot. And, oh, this is too bright, isn't it? This is another one. This is from 2021. And this is from 2014, taken offline from a climber who gave us a trip report. His only name was Pellucid Wombat. So if Pellucid Wombat is in the room, good job. It might be a guy named Mark P. Thomas, but there are many Mark P. Thomases in this United States. And in any case, this is what it was like in 2014, and you saw 2021. This is the climber report that Pellucid Wombat gave. And they went right up that midline, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then bailed out because they were running out of time. But you see the face. And this is from his trip report. He's going up here, and the reason I want to emphasize what he did is because this crack line that he followed, and now he's looking down at it, his foot is resting there. Everything to the left of the crack is now gone. So dig it. That's what they're coming up. You can see the ground far below. Only you people can do this kind of thing. It just shudders me to look at it. Check it again. We are talking about the rock fall from God. And that happened between, and I'll just demonstrate to you why, September of 2023 when we saw it, and it was seen with the buttress from space, as we'll see later, but also by other people, in spring of 2022. So sometime in those 18 months, that slab came off. And boy, does it look good when you are camping underneath it. This is the next morning. Check it out. And I'll come back to this photo a few more times because that's one of the best views of it straight on. And then you can see what I'm saying about the new route. What those guys did as a chimney climb is now an open book crack at best. I welcome you to it, but look at this. I'm going to say nobody has climbed that yet. So this is Google Earth. You know how you can toggle around in Google Earth and you can get views from different angles. And this, strangely, they update Google Earth on a regular basis with photographs from space and cobble them together, Google style. There's the broken face. This photo was taken a week after we were there. So this is like September 23rd of 2023 is the last time they've updated the Google. And there's another shot from above. I toggled it around. Is that as vertical as it looks? I don't know. You guys are better at this than me in terms of calculating, but look at what slid down. And I think this might be the moment to shift into what gets called the digital humanities, which means I use my fingers to do the calculations. But I'm saying that's a 300-foot face with about maybe 100 feet wide, and let's say just 10 feet thick, broke off. I think that's conservative. We're talking 44 million pounds of rock, 22,000 tons, which would take about 1,000 dump trucks to carry it away. And it's all down here. So what would it be like to have been there in Doozy Basin when that happened? If you were on it, you would be in trouble. There was indeed a route that ran right up the middle here. It's called the Wells-Schneider route. I called up Bob Schneider, my friend, who established Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument and is a rock climber and a good friend of Doug Robinson's. Bob Schneider, were you the Schneider that did the Duratissima? Because it's not there. And he said, no, that was another Schneider. So this is the next morning, and it's the best picture, I think, that I've got of it, of the thing that came off. And it began to make me realize that, once again, John Muir, so smart, he talked about the Sierras. Let's see, I wrote this down. The whole mass of the Sierra is built up of brick-like blocks. And he called them parallelepipeds, which is a geometrical term or a topological term that nobody's ever used before or since, really. Parallelepipeds, you can see why. It just means brick-shaped, but if it's a parallelogram, it'd still be the same. We all know about the way that the granite of the Sierras cracked, that it was molten underground 5 to 10 miles, and it took millions of years to cool. And as it did, it turned into granite, our beautiful granite, Pluton, the batholith of the Sierra. And then as the 5 to 10 miles of rock over it was shed off and it came to the surface, the weight off of it, expansion, it breaks vertically, horizontally, you know, the onion skin domes, the various ways that it breaks, the bread loaf rocks that you walk by that look like they've been sliced. Everybody knows this about how granite breaks up if you're a Sierra person. But what Muir called it was what modern geologists call fault joints. That's a strange term. Fault, what's a fault? There's many different wordings for fault. What's a joint? We've got joints. A fault joint is not intuitive. What Muir called them, because he was like pre-modern geology, was planes of cleavage. And this is a better term. There are planes of cleavage in the granite of the Sierras. And what I think we're seeing here, and I'll show some more pictures, is that this west face of Isosceles is shedding on these vertical planes of cleavage, which will presumably continue to happen. Because I'm thinking that the more I looked at these photos, and I immediately confess and recognize that you can go way too far at looking at photos of mountains. Different sunlight, different angle, different elevation, you know, they look different in every moment. And in fact, I turned this one into black and white just so that I could see the new break better. So that looks different. And then this is an acquaintance of mine, an artist from New York named David Brody, who is a Sierra guy also, but he comes out from the city where he has a studio and does these maximalist paintings where it takes him a couple years to put a lot of brushstrokes onto complicated paintings. He did this in a day, and you can see he kind of noticed there was something going on in there. But the thing I want to say about David is that when he was done at sunset in Doozy Basin, he hiked back down to his campsite and he couldn't find it. And so what I want to say is, that sounds crazy, right? But you've been in Doozy Basin, and I just want to say, anybody who has maybe finished a hike late and come back to their campsite and hasn't found it, can we have a raising of hands of people to whom that has happened? I knew it. It's not that hard to lose your campsite. But this is a guy from New York who it's kind of a hobby of his. What did he do? First, he hit his Garmin emergency, like, I'm in terrible trouble. So his wife in New York is freaking out. But secondly, he thought it through, and he simply walked out to South Lake that night. He was cold. He only had a T-shirt and his pants on. He had this painting with him. And he had to hire a guy the following couple of weeks to go in and find his campsite and hike it out for him. So I just share that with you. But back to planes of cleavage, I thought that with the wonder of my tech-supported home and PowerPoint's capabilities, I could put it side by side, and you can see, for instance, It's not just this buttress. Look at all this over here. It doesn't seem to be there anymore. There are falls all over the place. Also, yeah, I did close-ups just to say, I think there's rock shedding going on there on maybe one big plane of cleavage that it's all kind of falling back into. And then here at the top, I suddenly thought, this whole section fell off because it was there and now it's gone. And if you had been climbing then, you would have been equally doomed or whatever. And I'm not sure about this because of the angle problems, the light problem. I wouldn't swear to any of this. So I just bring you back to the new face and say, like, I don't know exactly what kind of climbers I'm talking to here, and I suspect it's all over the map in terms of how many of you are technical climbers. And I'm going to say that this face looks to me to be like 5'10 or 5'15 or 5'29 maybe. But pick your route. You could go and you could put in some pitons and chalks, or you could do this enormous open book crack. I don't want anybody to go get killed on this because it's like my idea and suggestion. You can call this the Robinson Duratissima. After you've done it, you can tack your name on also. So this is my friend Tob Killian, who I'm proud to call a friend, the great woodblock artist from Marin County, who is the great artist of the Sierra as well. What I love about this, first of all, I said to Tom, you know, these lines shouldn't be here anymore. Can you come up to my house and change the painting? And he said, Stan, just get yourself a black pen, take the glass out of it, be very careful. You can fix it yourself. I'm not going to mess with it. You know, I don't revise my art. But isn't this a beauty? And it's on my wall above my mom's piano in our living room. And this tent site is approximately where I camped on my first night in the Southern Sierra in 1975. So this is an extraordinary piece of art for me personally, and it is Doozy Basin at its finest with all of the, and all of you know that this weirdo lightning bolt stuff on Winchell and Thunderbolt Peak is all for real. Aha! This is Doozy Basin from space. My friends at Planet Labs, which is a company that is up in also in the Bay Area, they photograph the Earth every day from space, and they took requests from me. And I said, I want Doozy Basin, and this camera was 60 miles high shooting it from the southwest. So there is Isosceles, there's Columbine, there's Knapsack Pass, there's Thunderbolt Pass, there's the big old wall of the Palisades, there's the Palisade Glacier. And therefore, Bishop Pass is over here and all the way down to Chocolate Peak. And then the huge drop from what we call the lip down to the Muir Trail in LeConte Valley. So deep that notice this bench over here on the other side with Rambeau and the other lakes and the plane that crashed into the lake, et cetera. You're not seeing the bottom of LeConte Canyon. These canyons are so deep and narrow that from this angle, it's deeper than what we're actually seeing. And the diamond shape of Doozy Basin is not at all apparent when you're in it. And that might be an artifact, actually. But between that and Palisades Basin, which I dearly, dearly love, with Potluck Pass, which is called Potluck because there's no good way over it, and so you take potluck. This is one of my faves. And what it is they did this for me in, I got a closer close-up, and then closest of all. And so it's a little fuzzy, but it's 60 miles away that they took this photo. And this is in the spring of 2022, and the buttress is still there. You can see it. So you can just barely see it, but now we've got it, that's why we've got it wired down to 1.5 years since when that big old slab came off. And it must have been loud. There were probably sparks. There was probably a big cloud of dust thrown into the air. I guess the local, you know, even the marmots might have paid attention to that. So while we're looking at things from space, this is the end papers of my High Sierra book, and I just love this photo. This too is 60 miles high, taken from not straight above, which is, I think, the crucial thing. And I almost don't need to point out to you the many beloved places that you all must have your favorites here, and indeed, those of you who have done the whole set, have been all over this stretch of range, but I just want to point out the gloriousness of seeing it all at once, the Super Kern, the Upper Kern Basin, the Kings Canyon and the middle fork of the Kings with Tehipite Dome, and then on up to the breaks and all the way on up to Muir Pass, and then down the San Joaquin and up Mono. And then these massifs, I called them in my book, the high zones, where it's really high and the deep canyons are not dissecting it. The Tablelands is one, the Monarch Divide, the Bear Lakes, and then strangely, because I just discovered this a few years ago and a friend dragged me up there because I was completely unconvinced that it would be cool because I'm a Southern Sierra guy. For me, it begins about right here and it goes down to here, and everything north here, even including Yosemite, is of limited interest to me, although it's obviously great, but I just don't know it very well. It's too crowded, etc. I'm just a fool that way, but I trend south myself personally. So a friend dragged me up into this area. Well, what the hell? And yet, it's fantastic. It's a gigantic granite flat plateau, a little lower, but clearly glaciated. It was a mer de glace in that it was completely covered by ice in the ice ages, as were, well, where the hell is it? Tuolumne was a mer de glace. The Upper Kern was a mer de glace. And in general, that's pretty much it for the High Sierra. The ridges cut up the ice so that it's mostly canyons and basins in terms of ice coverage, but there were some areas completely covered. And when you go on to this, it's rather glorious. So there's not any particularly cool peaks in this area, so I don't know how much you've explored it, but I recommend it for a quick getaway. This is looking at Whitney. I'll go to the next picture. It's somehow too bright. Looking at Whitney from the northwest, so you can see all the way down to the Owens Valley floor. You can see the slot that goes up to Whitney Portal. There's Whittier itself. I got a close-up on it. There you go. Wow. Whitney from space. Phil has asked me, is there any class 3 climbs that I'm too scared to make that you all could take me up and kind of drag me by a rope or carry me? And I've often been interested in the Mountaineers route that Muir took first on the north side of Whitney. I'm scared of it. It looks awful. And Whitney, when he took a bunch of young men, like 5 years later, to climb Whitney from the same Mountaineers route, which is Muir's discovery, he took them on this slot here across and got to the top because he didn't want to go up that again, where he had been holding onto pebbles that were frozen in ice and doing John Muir craziness. And he didn't want to risk these younger guys. And they were all whining, oh, we want to do the hard stuff. And he said, no, take it this way. So they climbed Whitney that way. And I would say also, I want to say, although this photo is a little overexposed, that Teleño Lake is by far the more mystical spot than the top of Whitney. But we're in such a silly culture that the tallest, the biggest, the best, the whatever, the most mystical is Teleño Lake, which was Norman Clyde's favorite lake for good reasons. I wonder if the brightness, I wonder if I can fix this. Maybe, maybe not. This is just the same thing, Whitney from the east side. I won't persist because something's wrong with these photos, but there's the road up to Whitney Portal. Probably you all have done the east face of Whitney or whatever, these hardcore things. We went to Iceberg Lake here in the snow once. That was very hard on snowshoes. It was too steep for snowshoes and we didn't have crampons. That was our version of scary. And we watched people, extreme sports people from like New Zealand with gigantic tattoos on their gigantic biceps. They were skiing down the Mountaineers route. And when they fell, they would just do somersaults and keep skiing when they hit their feet again. And it was kind of amazing. So there it is even better. I kind of like it. The Mountaineers route and up to the top and all of these beautiful features having to do, and Teleño Lake looking good, and Wales Lake is looking good. Wallace Lake's out of the photo. I'm hoping that when we get back to normality, we'll get better photo quality. But okay, I'm on time. This is fantastic. I'm changing to part 2. from a new route, which I encourage you all not to do, to a new name. I was hiking in the spring snow with my friend Terry Bear and a couple of other friends in the spring of 2008, and we were warned by skiers that 100-mile-an-hour winds were called for that night from the west, and so we were going down Paiute Canyon to get to a campsite protected from the west wind, which actually Paiute Canyon has nothing in terms of protection because the glacier cleaned it all up, and it's a smooth shot. We ended up camping at the North Lake Campground, which was luckily completely empty and was ours to trash as we wanted. And over to the left here, and we'll see other pictures of it, but you know what I mean, is Mount Emerson. I had been reading a lot of Emerson and Thoreau at the time. And this, over to the right, on the other side of Paiute Canyon, was a peak. And I said to Terry, make your snowshoes in the form of a T, because that's Mount Thoreau. And so it was a high wind. I kept shouting to him, Terry, make a form of a T. And this is what he did. And I just said, oh, fuck it. You know, we'll go with a reverse L, but it meant to be a T. This is my moment of illumination and me thinking that should be Mount Thoreau. And it's peak 12691. It had no name, although it had informal names, the Wonder Peak mainly, because the Wonder Lakes are on the other side. I went to the other Table Mountain, which is a big plateau between Sabrina and South Lake, and took this photo to confirm that it would be very cool to have Emerson and Thoreau with Paiute Canyon going between. And it's just like Scylla and Charybdis, which I bet many of you have climbed. And you know the way Chasm Lake drops down the Enchanted Gorge between Scylla and Charybdis. And this was a Native American trail over Paiute Pass, which is obvious as the day. So there were probably Native American names for both these peaks, not well known to us now. And this was always called Emerson. It's said that Muir named it, and he did name a mountain Mount Emerson, but now people think he was talking about Mount Huxley. Not this peak, but Mount Huxley, because he was coming up the San Joaquin Canyon, and he was in the Evolution Valley. People doubt that, in other words, the name Emerson migrated to this. And I said, this should be Mount Thoreau. Now, I have to admit that this is the kind of thing that I say to my friends, and then I never do anything about it, of course. It would be stupid or crazy to do something about it. Here's another shot of it from the northwest at sunset, going up Paiute Canyon, kind of rugged. In fact, for those of you who are climbers, it strikes me that this would be an intricate and complicated route to the top. The other side, which is the one we took, is a walk up. So we went to the Owens Valley, and with a group gathered by my friend David Robertson, a professor who wrote West of Eden, a book about the art of Yosemite Valley. He was a head of the Yosemite Association for a while. And we went over to the valley, and this is at Fish Creek. We looked at petroglyphs, and among the crowd assembled was Tom Killian and Gary Snyder, both friends. And here are the two greatest artists in the Sierra Nevada's history, right next to each other, looking up at petroglyphs and looking at me because I had climbed to the top of these little hilltops. Such a climber that I am. And that's me and Gary at the end of the week that we spent together. And I'm still in great touch with him. He's just one of the most beautiful people alive. At age 95, doing good, and a kind of a blessing to all of us Californians to have such a great poet and person as our kind of leader as to how to be Californians. And then this is Lori Glover, and I met at this conference, and that's her Australian boyfriend at that time, who is Dick Bryant. Those of you who have read my book, The Ministry for the Future, you know, the crazy Australian economist named Dick, who is always giving advice to the minister of the future. That's Dick there. I just put him directly in the book. And Lori, I was talking to her at this conference, which was just a year later, and I said, really, there's a Mount Thoreau up there. I just think that this peak should be called Mount Thoreau. And she said, okay, let's do it. And I said, well, what does that mean? She said, we climb the peak, we put a summit register on it, and we hold a party, and we celebrate it. And then she even came up with, and then we publish a book about it. And I talked to the Bureau of Names at the U.S. Geological Survey, and my wife worked for the U.S. Geological Survey. I liked them a lot. And the guy at the Bureau of Names said, don't even try for an official designation. It's a wilderness area. Just do it, and it'll spread. So that's what we've done. So this was the preliminary investigation with Lori and Dick to scope the route and see whether it would work, and it obviously would. Though I don't even need to point out to you the simplest route there. And that's what we ended up doing in 2014. This is dawn on the day of our ascent, taken by Sierra photographer Christopher Woodcock, part of our group. And I believe that we stayed at this lake here the night before, super windy. Water was being tossed off of the lake surface and onto our camping gear. Just literally lifted off. And as Tom Killian said, everything smells like trout. And then we took the route on up and to the top. That's a cold morning in camp with Lori and maybe Dick and Tom Killian, laughing at them. They were kind of first-timers, and it's always fun to laugh at first-timers. And then we just walked on up from the lake. That, I think, is my friend Daryl Deviney and Carter Scholes, part of the expedition. These are two of my closest hiking companions. We stopped about halfway up, and I'm there, I don't know why, signing the summit register. I think we all decided to sign it in case Dick didn't make it to the top. He had never been higher than 3,000 feet in Australia in his entire life. And here we were at about 10, and he was beginning to feel it. And so we stopped and had everybody sign the summit register. Lori, Carter, that's Hillary Gordon, Michael Blumlein's wife. And maybe that's Chris Woodcock, the photographer. And you can see Dick is kind of holding himself together. But we made it. And that's the top. And I'm glad for this photograph because you can see the relationship to Mount Humphreys to the north, which I suppose you all have been up Humphreys too. Oh my God. Terrifying, I say. But at this point, we're looking south. On this, my beloved friend Michael Blumlein, I think, is pointing towards Mount Darwin, but I'm not sure. But we made it to the top. We put a summit register box, very inadequate, right there. It was an old card filing box that had a handle on the top, and so, of course, the little holes in the metal that hold the stupid metal handle are not waterproof. So this is a bad summit register box, bought at a thrift store. But we left it there, and we got Chris Woodcock to set his thing to get us all. So Dick Bryan and Lori Glover, Michael Blumlein and his wife Hillary Gordon. That's Paul Park at the top, great fantasy writer, science fiction writer. And that must be Carter Scholes. And the photographer Christopher Woodcock, Tom Killian at the back, my friend Daryl Deviney, and me. There were 3 people that were supposed to be part of our party, including a reporter for the New York Times who was going to report on it. They lost the route. They never joined us in our camp that night because they headed up from Lower Lamarck Lake onward towards Upper Lamarck Lake, and we never saw them again until the party afterwards. But at least we had 10 people on top. Later, the book got published, and this is really the man, David Robertson, a neighbor of mine, a lovely guy, professor of English and of biblical studies. He's the one that gathered us all. And we were at Moe's bookstore, and I'm happy to report that my beloved lost friend Ian Banks is there facing you. Read some Ian Banks if you want to have your mind blown. And David, we had a celebration where Lori was the choreographer, the dramaturge, a reading, everybody read from the book she had assembled and edited, and it was published by Artemisia Press, which is the publishing arm of the Mono Lake Committee. So you can help the Mono Lake Committee, because all funds go to them, and read a very entertaining book about naming Mount Thoreau. There's Michael and Hillary at that same party. Michael is no longer with us, but one of my favorite people, and a great Sierra person, a great San Francisco person. Oh, wait a second. And then, yeah, Gary enjoying a reading. So, yeah, this is maybe January of 2017. And this is a service that I did to the world. The red is where Snyder has been in the Sierra as explained by his own journals that are published with Tom Killian in a great book called The High Sierra of California, where Killian gives you some history. He gives you Snyder's journals from his hikes. And Snyder was a much better recorder of where he went than, say, John Muir, because you can't tell where John Muir went, because he didn't know and there weren't names and et cetera. But with Gary, I've managed to mark a very considerable backpacking career, including peaks, Mount Stewart, Tyndall, Heckle, and Mount Sill are peaks I know he climbed, as well as, for sure, Matterhorn Peak, which is famous because of the Dharma bums, but also Banner Peak and a couple more. He was a climber in the Mazama Club, a club like yours, up there in Oregon. When he was a kid, he was climbing like a madman in the 30s. And indeed, he's very proud that he climbed Mount St. Helens and the peak is no longer there, etc. But, and also I'll say this about Gary. When he got out of the Kern, he went over Millie's Foot Pass. That's Mildred Gents, who in a Sierra Club party, like in your group, in 1953, took Millie's Foot Pass. I don't know how many of you have taken it. It's class 3. It scared the crap out of us. But the thing is, they did that in 1953, and I'm telling you, that's not a Native American pass, okay? They were not that foolish. And so Gary Snyder is probably within the first 10 people to go over Millie's Foot Pass, which I enjoy that factoid about him and want to share it with you. At the top of Mount Heckle, I went to the Bancroft. I very much appreciate what the SPS has done for summit registers and collecting them, putting them in the Bancroft. I've seen a lot of them. Every single summit register from the 1920s has Norman Clyde's name in it multiple times. But in this case, Mount Heckle, August 28th, 1969, Gary Snyder being Gary Snyder, not only did he write a poem in the summit register, but he was revising it. I'm thinking, Gary, you know, you're on top, just relax a little. You don't have to be a poet. He was also with, and the name isn't here, that I can tell, but he was with Nanao Sakaki, a Japanese poet that Gary made famous in America. And he said, that's the only time I ever saw Nanao nervous. We were going up a very steep ravine, a cleft, and there was a chalk stone in it, and we had to get around that chalk stone. He said, that's the only time I've ever seen Nanao Sakaki nervous. But I give you this with thanks for the gift of keeping those summit registers at the Bancroft. That's me very happy next to Gary signing this book at that same party. And now, this is caltopo.net, and you know Caltopo, it's the greatest map around with all kinds of informal names. So there we have it. And that's still there. And this is Google Maps. It's on Google Maps, which I love. And lastly, it's on Google Earth. And the only thing I'm going to say about that is actually whoever pinned it, which God bless them, actually Mount Thoreau is right over here. So if you happen to know how to manipulate Google Earth's pin system and want to correct that error, feel free. But we feel fulfilled. We feel like it's a name and it's an American transcendentalist. You know, our entire American sense of wilderness is transcendentalist and was made by these guys, Emerson and Thoreau, amongst many others. And I want to add one little thing, though, here. Why wasn't there a Mount Thoreau already? Okay? And this is an interesting story, because all the names in the Sierras were put up there by white guys between 1860 and about 1920. They were done. Well, Thoreau was unknown in those years. Amazing to think now, he had been forgotten. He was a niche interest of a few people, and it was the American Renaissance of the 1920s where they managed, essentially English professors, to pull him out of the mists of the past. Excuse me. And so that's why his name isn't up there already. And indeed, there's nothing named after Thoreau in the American West. And it's a timing error, a timing issue. There's a Thoreau, Arizona, and apparently it's named after a railroad engineer. So he needs to be up there, and I'm glad he's up there. This is something that Phil sent me. This, my friend John Vester and a couple of more climbable friends went up there specifically to see how it was doing, and you see Humphreys again in the background. They found that our summit register, thank you, our summit register was leaking, and our box was leaking, the summit register was wet, a certain somebody had defaced it, disagreeing with the name. So we took it, we gave it to the Bancroft, and it is kept adjacent to the Sierra Club, the Sierra Peak section collection, because it's not part of the Sierra Club, and it's not an official peak, but the librarian there was very, very heartfelt and helpful. He also showed us Kenneth Rexroth's ice axe, which they have, I don't know why. And if you are interested in Sierra poetry, I recommend to you the Mountain Poetry of Kenneth Rexroth, edited by yours truly, one of my proudest accomplishments. This book of Rexroth's Sierra Poems and Prose is magnificent. It's, dare I say it, I do, no, I won't say it. It's damn good. It's as good as it gets. So John helped, and they gave us a new summit box and a new register up there, which I think we'll probably go try to investigate next year. Actually, the first one John offered to me was an ammunition box, which is definitely waterproof. But I was just thinking, Thoreau, ammunition box, no, let's not do that. So this is the book that resulted. I recommend it highly. And I thank Larry Glover with all my heart. And she's retired, but I still get together with her from time to time. And this is really her accomplishment. But it was my idea, which would have stayed lost forever with all my other great, crazy ideas, if it weren't for her and for this whole collective. So naming things. This is what I think we can do. And I will now shift into a kind of miscellaneous ending here. Names. There's 3 or 4 chapters on names in my High Sierra book, which I recommend to you. Let's not give up on naming things. Let's say that those late Victorian American guys blew it in many occasions. Because you don't need like Granite Pass, really? Round Lake, really? But also, you know, there's a whole bunch of scientific racists up there whose names ought to be taken out. Not that they need to be erased from history, but they can be taken off of our mountain range. There's about 10 of those. Also, the robber barons. Have you noticed, if you get to Google Earth, and it's Huntington, Stanford, and a couple more, Harriman, I think, in Pioneer Basin, were those pioneers? Well, no. So they should either be real pioneers, or they should call it, like I have for years, Robber Baron Basin, and that would make things clear. But I'm going to say this. This beautiful mountain, which you all know and recognize, that should be Mount Muir. And the little twiddly thing over there that we call Mount Muir now should be Mount Whitney. They're right next to each other. You just reverse the names. And meanwhile, you could admire the greatness of Russell. And I know a lot of you are probably devotees of that supposedly fantastic West Ridge Class 3 perfect Russell climb. And then the other one I can't remember over there. Yeah. What fun for you all. I'm too scared to do it. We could have talked about winter backpacking, and that's me heroically pointing in the wrong direction. We could have talked about always keep your camera near the lake in the morning, in the calm, so you can get photos like this, because that's just the reflection in the water. And I could have spent the entire hour with what looks like in the lake surfaces. Keep your camera ready, and I wonder how many people have seen the Sierra Nevada bighorn sheep in the backcountry. Yes. You know, that is the highest percentage that you would get in any crowd on earth, because there's only about as many as there are people in this room, and they're invisible unless they're moving. So I know you feel lucky. I feel lucky. I only saw them after 40 years of backpacking, and only because a ranger said, there's a herd summering right over there at that meadow, and I'll take you and show you. And I kind of like the way this one is like that mythical creature. It's a two-headed beast. And then this is a game that people play, like, where is this? And this is the only crowd, and this might be almost my last. But you know, this is like rock art, right? This is like out of the Paleolithic caves. It's like maybe a flying antelope, or isn't it quite an awesome thing? And I'll give a postcard of naming Mount Thoreau to anybody who can identify it, and I'm going to give them out anyway. So, and if you want to know the answer, we can. Well, wait a second. That's the last picture, so we'll leave that as a beautiful piece of rock art, if I can. I might have screwed up anyway, and plunged out of the slideshow, for which I am sorry. But that did bring me to very near my time to switch over to Q&A, and it's too bad because what I would have done is go back to the range. I'm going to go back and get to it. Just that photo that will remind us of the range, but without the, let's see. Yeah, there we go. And if that can be made into a whole thing, we'll make that the backdrop. And I'm switching over in a timely fashion, if I may say so myself, to Q&A. Thank you. And I hope there are questions, because I would be disappointed if there weren't. And thank you for indulging me. There isn't a single other audience on earth where I could have shown this particular slideshow without being considered to be quite a maniac and a geek. But this is the crowd, so thank you for that. Yes?
Where was the Bighorn picture taken?
That was in the Mitre Basin. Yeah, and there was a herd there, and I say in the past tense because I've gone 3 times. I saw them 4 years in a row at Upper Soldier Lake and all over from Upper Soldier Lake. They could clearly go miles per day, but it seemed like the meadow they were hanging in with the kids and the whole gang of about 30 or 40 of them. So 1/10 of the entire population was in Upper Soldier Lake Meadow in the Mitre Basin or right next to the Mitre Basin. Well, now they don't seem to be there, and there was that horrible year where they went from 600, and they were down to 100 when the Endangered Species Act was invoked, and God bless the ESA. So then the feds went to work on it, and they began to split herds up and take them else. I wrote about it in my book a little bit, like the alien abduction. You're hanging with your gang, and then suddenly you feel sick, you fall asleep, and you wake up and you're somewhere else. And this is truly devastating, but the numbers had been brought up to 600, and that bad winter, the super bad winter of not that long ago, and I'm forgetting the year, but you might remember, 23? Well, the numbers, as far as they can tell, have gone from 600 back down to 300. So half the bighorn sheep, Sierra Nevada bighorn sheep alive, died in that winter. And I'm sure that you all saw the mule deer catastrophes at Bishop Pass, and this is like when you have a bad leader, bad things can follow from that. Sliding off a cliff together, and oh my God, the bodies, it was really, you still see the occasional foreleg or spine scattered around, and you realize it's a scary place up there. But yeah, Mitre Basin, they don't seem to be there anymore, that herd, and I'm mystified and I'd be interested, because they are being tracked with radio collars, if people know what happened to that one. Yeah.
The change in the topography and rock composition of the isosceles you showed, is that a unique phenomenon, or are there other instances in the Sierra that in just a brief time make such a change with the appearance and rockfall?
Well, I think this is a spectacular case, but all of you know as well as I do that pieces of Yosemite are always falling off, sometimes killing people. Glacier Point, Half Dome, Glacier Point. And so when granite is close to vertical, and I'm saying like 70 degrees, and there are those planes of cleavage, then it's just gravity, and then it's water seeping in and freeze-thaw cycle. Every time it freezes, it pushes it, and then gravity. and maybe a very mild earthquake. And I know Muir at one point wrote, oh my, you know how he went into an ecstasy. Oh, there's a storm, I have to climb a tree and see if the lightning will hit me, that kind of, or stepping to the edge of Yosemite Falls to look over, like knee deep in Yosemite Falls to look over the edge. Muir was exceptionally reckless. And so I think he wrote about that too. So it's not, I don't think it's uncommon, and I think Isosceles west face is, as I said, coming apart quite rapidly. So make your climb fast when you encounter that face. Yeah. Michael?
How did you come up with the idea for the book and all those chapters that are so unique and so creative, I think?
Well, I am a novelist. I'm a science fiction writer. So I wrote novels, but every year, I reckon it's sort of like you. Everybody's got a different number. You may have calculated. I spent about 2 years of my life in the High Sierra, scattered over about 150 trips. And on the trail, I'd be thinking, I should be writing about this. And don't put it on Mars this time, you know, because my Mars is the Sierra Nevada made into a planet. Green Mars is simply the Sierra Nevadas. So I thought, you know, I'm actually getting up there in age a little bit. And if I find myself keeling over and gonna be dead when I hit the floor, and I have not written about the Sierra Nevada, I'm gonna be really mad at myself. Really mad. Like, oh my God, how could you be such a stupid head as to miss that? And then, and on a trail, one thing I could do is think about, you need to talk about scrambling. How can you talk about things that aren't life and death? Because there is climbing literature, but there's not scrambling literature. And it's sort of like, you know, gardening. Or there are things that are interesting that are actually hard to write about to make them interesting. So I was thinking and thinking and thinking, and 40 years passed. And the pandemic happened. I had finished Ministry for the Future, which blew up my life in many ways, and so did the pandemic. So I said, time to write it. And I wrote that book in about 2 months, and it was twice as long as it is now. And my editor at Hachette at Little Brown said, Stan, this is all very good, but you don't want to kill people with Sierras. Well, yes, I do. I want to say everything. And he said, no, edit it. And so I squished it quite a bit. I cut out entire chapters and got it down to its current pretty lengthy length. And the revisions and the photo selections and the maps took more like about 10 months. So it was a year-long project in 2020. It must have been 2021 that I wrote it, or even 2020. It's a pandemic project. Now I've finished another book that is in just like it in format, because the format seemed to work. And this new one is about Antarctica. It's not anywhere near closest to my heart, because Antarctica is not exactly a lovable place. It is magnificent, but it's not lovable, I would say, even though I love it. Maybe it's lovable if you like a lot of ice and cold. So I've done that same format, and the format just seemed to speak to me. Talk about yourself, but not all the time. Give us history, geology, glaciology, and also try to answer the question, why are the Sierras so special? And I've been in the Alps, I've been in the Himalayas, I've been in the Transantarctics, a little bit in the Rockies. And there are many other great mountain ranges on this earth, as you know. I've even seen the Southern Alps in New Zealand. So I've seen some mountain ranges. None of them are as good if you want to do what we do. Why? Well, that was organizing principle for the book. Let's see if we can answer this. And the massifs, the fact that the weather's good, the plateau systems, the beauty of the fellow creatures up there, the landscape itself, the granite, the metamorphic rock on top of the granite. You had to try to throw it all in and see if it all added up. And I would say that it's even more than you can articulate. This is my feeling. I finished the book and I said, well, I still didn't capture it. It's 500 pages in, and there's something that I know you all recognize, and I guess it's a feeling, but all you can really say is it's my Sierra feeling. And then to articulate it, especially to people who haven't been up there. You all know exactly what I'm talking about, but you talk to a group of general strangers who have not been up there, and well, it's like being maybe, I wouldn't want to say a cult, but they don't understand because they haven't actually done it. And it's not a cult, it's just an experience, it's a feeling. Yes?
Do you worry about overuse?
Of the Sierra?
find that since COVID in particular, there's a lot more people,
Yeah.
and there's a general feeling that there's overuse.
Well, I like the permit system and the national park. I love the national park, and U.S. Forest Service in certain ways has been very, very good, and so that helps. And then also people, especially first timers. In fact, people got angry at me for publishing a book that talked about the Kauai Basin, the Dumbbell Basin. Don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. But whether I tell them or not, they're going to go to the Muir Trail. And they're going to consider that being on the Muir Trail is like the acme of Sierra life, which is not true, but let them believe it. And the Muir Trail is like being on Highway 5, and indeed, when you're walking waist deep in a trench that is made by other hikers across a meadow, you're thinking, damn, this is overuse. But you get off the trail even a mile, or if you go into a basin that has no trails in it and no obvious paths into it, you will not see, you'll see more deer than people. And when you see a person, it's like, oh, here's a fellow traveler, you know? What are you doing in Dumbbell Basin? And the last, we ran into a pair of guys in Dumbbell Basin. Why are you here? Our father told us we had to spread his ashes in Dumbbell Basin. So we're doing it. So I think it is a problem, but I don't think it's a problem that will, I mean, as long as we keep control of the world, then the wilderness permit system and the general tendency for Americans to do what's got a name and do what everybody else does. So the Muir Trail, okay, it's a pilgrimage, but a pilgrimage is a specific human act, like that north coast of Spain. Or, you know, and so they do a pilgrimage. Fine, it's a beautiful pilgrimage, but it's not exactly the same as what you all are doing. And you know what I mean. You get back there into the Ionian Basin or the Kauai Basin, you're going to be okay for crowds. And I actually like the internet, young people who are with their handles. Like, I wondered how to get from Old Squaw Lake to the next lake over without dropping enormously down the cliff into the canyon below and coming back up the other side. So I just traversed it. And I'm thinking, whoa, that's a heck of a traverse. But I kind of love the discourse. The community that is online is fun reading. You had a question back here.
Any thoughts of another Sierra book?
No, I'm done. I mean, I put it all in there, and I actually also put in a reading list of the other Sierra books that I liked, and so I leave it at that. There is a great body of Sierra literature. It's actually rather small, and it isn't even that great, but it's good enough. It's what we have. I mean, Snyder and Rexroth, you know, there's some great poetry anyway. Yeah.
You did say you cut half, so.
Where's the author?
No, the other half, I'll think about it. Yeah, there's a book called The Best of Kim Stanley Robinson that isn't really true, and I was making jokes with Gene Wolfe, who we said the next book is going to be called The Worst of Kim Stanley Robinson. I said, no, he says we're going to call it The Least of the Kim Stanley Robinson. And finally, Gene Wolfe, the Every Bit As Good As. So, but I doubt I will. I've said my piece. I would. The only thing I would want to do is maybe do exactly the wrong thing. Oh, people should go here. People should go there. We get enough of that. Yeah.
What do you think the Sierra Hills will be like in 50 years from now?
Well, that's a good question. Well, I can tell you a really sad story. I went up to the upper end of Dead Man's Canyon, and I had done that in 2003. And I presume you know Upper Dead Man's Canyon. There's not too many interesting peaks there, but it's a great canyon. And the USGS map and our own eyes, 7 little glaciers in the head wall facing north, bunk, 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 bunk. Beautiful. I went there in 2022, and there was 1/3 of one left, and the others were gone. So 50 years from now, I think Palisades Glacier will be gone, and there will be no glaciers in the Sierra Nevada. And this will be bad. Visually, ecologically, hydrologically, this will be, and there's no stopping it. We've baked it in. We could perform like saints starting tomorrow with climate change and fossil fuel reduction, and those glaciers are too small. So I've had to take the long view, and so as a science fiction writer, I'm going to say not 50 years, but 5,000 years. We have a little jiggered our climate, we'll have glaciers back, it'll all be okay. Just take the really long view. Yeah.
What are your summer plans?
Well, this summer I am going to go up to Desolation again with a friend my age who has Parkinson's diagnosis. So we go from Wrights Lake to Twin Lakes, and then we go up onto the Crystal Range, which I love with all my heart, and we do Desolation. I've never seen the Palisades Glacier. I probably should see it before it goes away and I go away. Never been up to that. I've been to the Palisades and in Palisades Basin on the other side, what I call the inside, many times. I love it. But I've never actually been from Glacier Lodge, gone on up to the north side of the Palisades. I hear there's a Robinson Mountain there, and so I need to go see that. And so I may do that, and I want to go back to Mount Thoreau that I described, in order to see what the summit register looks like these days. And I haven't been up there since that first ascent, and one of my good buddies was not available for that trip, and he's never been. So, and then I have to confess that I spend 3 months of every summer now on the coast of Maine, in that little chunk of the Sierra Nevadas called Mount Desert Island, on the coast of Maine. Beautiful granite, glaciated, and cast into the Atlantic. Well, I hike my brains out there, but it takes up this year my August, September, and half of October. So I'll hike through June, July, and then I'll hike in the fall. And I might do a snowshoe trip in May and tromp around in somewhere, probably Desolation on snowshoes, which I recommend highly. So I have plans, and I'm trying to stay healthy and knock on wood. A lot of you, I'm looking around thinking, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. You do it, you can feel lucky that you can still do it or even think about doing it, and then just keep doing it and take it as long as you can. Because it is a blessing to be up there. We are blessed. This is one of the major life blessings that a lot of people don't know about. But I'm knowing some of the stories that I've heard, I reckon 2 years of my life up there. Some of you, if you were to calculate it, which I encourage you to do, keep maps and mark where you've been. Bet you all do that, or a lot of you. And then sometime try to run it in your mind. How many nights have I been up there? And because it's a kind of a sign that you did things right, at least in that one aspect of your life. Yes, Alicia, is that who it is?
Alicia.
Hi.
So I mentioned before I'm an AP environmental science teacher up in Mammoth, and I assigned Ministry for the Future as a summer reading for that class. I was drawn to it because it was it's sad, but it's also optimistic in the way that it faces the future. And I feel that since it's been published, the world has gotten harder to deal with. So what would you say to like the next generation, so like my students who are 15, 16, 17, in terms of like how do they face the world as it is today with the climate change, the environmental problems, but also as they start to learn about the wilderness, because even though I live in the most beautiful place, not all of them have had the chance to go see, let's say, the Palisades Glacier or something.
Oh, wow. Well, take them over to the Devil's Post Pile and lay them down on it and tell the story. But to your larger question, because Mammoth is a good place to grow up, I presume, although tourist towns have their troubles, as I know. So, not that Davis is a tourist town, but Bar Harbor, Maine definitely is. I've been talking to young people myself, usually undergraduates, but also often younger in Davis. You're never going to get out of it. It will last the rest of your life. You will be in the climate change century, and it will be a battle throughout, a wicked political battle, a difficult ecological and planetological century. And their whole lives, it will be an overdetermining situation that they can't get out of. So there you need the fantasy literature like Tolkien. You don't get to choose the moment you're in. You have to just live it and do the best that you can. So I think they'll respond to that. I also tell them, when I was young, there was a bumper sticker, the one who dies with the most toys wins. Well, this was a statement of despair, of nihilism, of cynicism, dark, sarcastic humor, unless it was on certain kind of cars in which they obviously really believed it. What is important is having meaning in your life. And for the young people, what's meaning? Because getting and spending, capital accumulation, that's not really meaning. Commodity usage, being a consumer in a consumer society and just doing what you're told, essentially, oh, a new movie, oh, a new event, oh, a new way to play games, it can kill your spirit. So you need a project in the existentialist sense. You tell them this, a project. Teach them existentialism. It's like 2 pages long, and you got the whole story of it. Very useful philosophy that we make up our own meaning because it doesn't exist before we make it up. So you make it up, and then you've got a project that you can orient your life around, a life project. And it doesn't matter what they're interested in. Arts, humanities, engineering, science, technology, they all have a climate change aspect to them. You can follow your dreams, and it will still have a climate change helpful aspect of it because it all applies. And so you've got a project, and even though it's a rather gnarly and frightening project, it's better than having no project and no meaning at all. So it's not quite like wartime, even. You will end up fighting other people over political matters. Hopefully it won't come to war. Sometimes it does. But the overriding sense that we are in a project together that we have to accomplish, it's better than nihilism. And you can tell them that, and if they get it, which, luckily you've got them for a year, you can keep pounding it into them. And I think it will work. I've seen it work with undergrads and people who have read Ministry for the Future. So I've actually seen the proof of it. So perhaps I can, that seems like an ending, perhaps. But I can say this. Let's see if I can track it. Where the hell is Mount, do I have my little, I do. Remember that antelope on the side of the mountain? I want to answer the question. Well, not the bighorn sheep, the literal one, but the drawing, the rock art. Where was it? And I recommend this. Is this Mount Clarence King? Wait a second. Is that Arrow Peak, maybe? And Mount Clarence King is... I should know this. There's the Middle Fork. You come up the Middle Fork, and then you have a split. Well, let's put it this way. Mount Clarence King, circumambulating it, if you're not a climber, is a great hike. You go up 60 Lakes Basin, and then you cross over into Gardner Basin. Then you go over King Cole, and you're in an unnamed basin on the northwest slope of Mount Clarence King. And the granite there is so white that it's maybe aplite. And that black drawing was on the wall of Mount Clarence King, the northwest wall of Mount Clarence King. Yeah, so gorgeous. And as for favorite spots, well, as I say, everybody's got theirs. And some of you, if you've actually done the, was it 247? 247 peaks, that's a lot. So I guess I can just end by saying congratulations on finding such a good life project. And let's keep doing it. Thank you.